The young woman stood at the rear of the assembly hall with her arms at her sides and her stance completely upright, but she did not raise her hand to salute the general. The officer's words pierced through the assembly hall like a sword. She stared him in the eye and murmured 7 words while the troops turned their attention to her and whispered, "Who do you think she is?" "You left my unit to die, sir," and the room suddenly became icy. Jade Nguyen was the name of the woman. There is no rank insignia on the shoulder of the small and composed 29-year-old individual, who always wears a normal tech support uniform. Jade worked at Remote Tactical Base Bravo in logistics and technical coordination. She arrived before sunrise every single day without fail. She calibrated training systems, checked ammunition logs, cleaned the shooting range before anyone else arrived, organized supply inventories, maintained communication equipment. Most officers barely noticed her existence. Some assumed she was just an assistant or a clerk or maybe a contractor. A few young recruits called her the ghost in the back room. She never protested, never complained, never asked for recognition or acknowledgement. But those who observed closely noticed something different about Jade. She fixed targeting arrays faster than most junior officers. She never flinched at the sound of gunfire. Even during live fire exercises, her hands and never shook. Even under pressure, she spoke in technical terms that surprised seasoned soldiers. She knew weapon specifications, ballistics data, tactical frequencies by heart, but she kept quiet always. In the background, always invisible, that morning a special event was scheduled at the base. General Gregory, a celebrated war hero with 3 combat tours, would tour the facility and deliver a leadership speech to all personnel. All military and civilian staff were required to line up in formation and salute when he entered. Jade stood at the back of the assembly hall, silent and still, hands clasped behind her back as the general entered with his entourage of colonels and majors. Everyone raised their hands in perfect military salute, everyone except her. A lieutenant noticed first. He snapped, "You civilian or not, stand at attention and salute the general." The general, who was perplexed by the growing commotion, walked forward through the crowd with a voice that was calm but firm. He asked the specialist, "Is there a problem here?" Jade did not move, did not blink, and did not speak. The murmur spread through the crowd like wildfire. "Is she serious? What is wrong with her? Show some respect. Who does she think we are?" When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but crystal clear. It broke through the silence that had been surrounding her. "You abandoned my unit to die, sir," and the entire assembly hall held its breath. The cameras were rolling for the promotional video. When the general looked at her expression, he blinked, genuinely bewildered, and asked, "Have you ever seen someone rudely ignore someone or disrespect someone?" The answer that Jade gave was gentle, yet it hit like a thunderbolt. "Raven, 12 Firebase Red Echo. I don't recognize you, and I'm not sure whose unit you're referring to." The name was dropped like a stone into still water on October 15, 2016. Officers nearby suddenly stiffened up. Some of them looked away, while others swallowed hard. One major's face went completely pale. The assistant to the general whispered something in his ear, but the general waved him off. "I don't remember anything about that particular operation." Jade replied simply after the ceremony ended in awkward silence. A major approached Jade privately in the corridor. "That operation was classified. You shouldn't be discussing," she cut him off quietly. "I was there. I watched my captain bleed out in my arms. His command ordered an extraction for everyone except us." That evening, a young intelligence analyst named Thompson began digging through archived files. He accessed fragments of an old after-action report buried in the classified database. Their emergency extraction was abruptly rerouted to another grid, coordinated by a direct override order from higher leadership, signed by then-Colonel Gregory. Raven 12 was a 6-person reconnaissance unit that was implanted deep behind enemy lines for the purpose of spying. During a coordinated ambush, they were carrying out their monitoring. Complete loss of units in the mission status near the bottom of the report. There was a contradiction with one name that was noted as an unverified survivor account. There were no survivors that were confirmed. As a result of his battle trauma, Jade Nguyen, who holds the title of Technical Sergeant, is an untrustworthy witness. Thompson conducted additional research into the personnel records, communications, Technician from another unit recalled the incident. There was a woman who crawled back into base 2 days later, half burned, no supplies. Severely dehydrated but still carrying her team's dog tags, she was babbling about an override about being abandoned. Command debriefed her for hours, then sealed the report, said her account was unreliable due to psychological trauma. We never saw her again. A frightening puzzle was being pieced together after that, and the dots were connecting like pieces. The news traveled gradually across the base like smoke, and all of a sudden, Jade's life took on a new significance. Thompson discussed his findings with a select group of officers who were trusted. It was her early arrivals, her painstaking effort coupled with her unflinching coolness in the face of intense pressure, her technical expertise. She was not simply a tech support worker. She was a soldier who had been erased from history, a survivor who had been silenced, the lady they ignored. Every day, the ghost in the back room was the only survivor of an operation that officially never had survivors. She was the reason. They ignored her every day. People started to remember small details about her, such as how she always ate alone in the cafeteria, how she never joined social gatherings, how she occasionally stared at the flag during morning ceremonies but never participated, and how she kept a small collection of dog tags in her desk drawer. Previously, they had imagined that she was antisocial or shy, or perhaps she just didn't care. Now, however, they realized that she was carrying ghosts. I was wrong to comment on the fact that you have ever judged someone without knowing what they had been through. The following morning, General Gregory called for a meeting to take place behind closed doors in the conference room. The attendees included base commanders, top staff intelligence officers, and Jade. The atmosphere was both tense and electric. The general began his speech with a calm but defensive tone. I went through all of the files that were found. I don't remember ever giving orders for any of my teams to be left behind, and I believe that the judgments I made regarding battle were necessary and sound. She pulled out a small worn notebook with pages that were yellowed with age, and each page contained handwritten entries, names, ranks, and blood types. Jade reached into her jacket and placed a scorched metal plate on the polished conference table. On the plate was a partial identification tag that was burned black at the edges and barely readable. It belonged to Captain Martinez, the last person who saluted you while requesting immediate medical evacuation for our wounded, complete and last radio transmissions, the latest on the patient's condition. The room remained utterly silent while she flipped through the pages of her team's last records, which were manually logged while they were under enemy fire. In the process of defending our radio operator, Sergeant Williams was struck by shrapnel to the chest. He passed away while he was calling for an extraction that never came. Private Rodriguez, who was 19 years old and bled out, asked me to tell his mother that he was brave. Corporal Chen, who had a collapsed lung, held our position for 6 hours before she passed away. She believed that assistance was on its way, while Kim, our medic, was using his own medical equipment to keep me alive. He passed away so that I could take this narrative with me when I went home. It was Private Thompson. Our smallest child took my hand and made me promise that I would remember each and every one of them, including their names and the stories they told. The room was slammed with a physical blow. As he turned page after page of meticulous records, ammunition counts, casualty reports, weather conditions, and enemy positions. All written. In the same steady handwriting, General Gregory's hands trembled slightly. "These are extremely detailed," he whispered. And even as the situation deteriorated, he continued to flip through the notebook. Jade nodded. "I was the communications experts. It was my job to document everything." She pulled out a small radio transcript. Handwritten on military letterhead, "This is the last transmission from Captain Martinez to your command. Post Raven 12 to command. We have 3 Kia 2 critical wounded requesting KOD, immediate medevac, at grid 41 SMB 12,345. We are combat ineffective but holding position. Please advise what you thought transmitted at 1347 hours was. Raven 12 redirect to grid 41 SMB, 54,321 higher priorities elsewhere. Out that grid coordinate was 12 kilometers, way through enemy territory. With no transportation, we couldn't move our wounded." The general's voice cracked. I wasn't told your team survived long enough to document all this," Jade replied simply. We didn't survive.
Sir, I did. That's enough. She stood up, and for the first time her voice carried the weight of command. I'm not right here to destroy your career, General. I'm not here for revenge or justice. I'm here so that no one ever forgets the cost of a quiet order. You made a tactical decision. I understand that, but 5 people died because of it, and for 8 years I've carried their memory in silence. Today, I needed you to know their names in the course of his distinguished career. General Gregory slowly stood. For the first time, he saluted her officers who were nearby, who had previously been dismissive. Now, he stood at attention, not for the general but for Jade. Jade did not return the salute. Instead, she simply nodded and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she placed the notebook and dog tags on the table. These items no longer belong to me, they belong to history. I owe someone a debt of gratitude if you have ever received assistance from someone who did not receive any recognition. She was invited to speak at a leadership conference, a veterans memorial service, and a military academy graduation. However, she declined all of these invitations and instead allowed those who did not return to speak. Instead, her locker was discovered to contain personal items in which she had never mentioned letters from families of her fallen unit members written to her over the years. Jade remained at the base, where she continued to work in logistics and technical support. However, now people greeted her with quiet respect. A patch from Sergeant Williams, a challenge coin from Corporal Chen, a red ribbon from Private Rodriguez, each with initials carefully embroidered. She had been their unofficial memorial, carrying their memory in silence for 8 years. Over the following months, the base quietly honored Raven 12. A memorial wall was installed near the main entrance with their unit emblem and motto. They held the line. She walked it home. No fanfare, no speeches, no media coverage, a simple acknowledgement. A note was left on Jade's desk that simply said, "I'm not disappearing. I just needed the truth to stand even if I walk away. The mission is complete, no parade." General Gregory personally funded the memorial, and he also quietly arranged for the official record to be amended to acknowledge the sacrifice of Raven 12. Then one morning, Jade was reported missing. No farewell ceremony, no forwarding address, just an empty workstation and a room that never quite felt the same. Later they discovered she had quietly transferred to another remote base, still working logistics, still arriving before sunrise, still serving in silence, still carrying the weight so others don't have to. Some say she continues to transfer from base to base, always in the background, always invisible, always remembering. The memorial wall remains visited quietly by soldiers who understand, and sometimes on October 15th someone leaves 6 small American flags there, one for each member of Raven 12. Comment: if you are of the opinion that the quiet truth speaks louder than applause, then I shall conduct my life with honesty. Jade's story teaches us something profound. Not everyone who stands silently is being disrespectful. Some stand still because they once stood alone when no one else came. The salute she refused wasn't rebellion, it was remembrance. A moment she refused to fake for the sake of those who never got a second chance. In a world obsessed with formality, she brought truth. You may encounter someone like Jade, quiet, distant, not clapping, not saluting, not joining the crowd. Before you judge, ask yourself, what might they be carrying that you'll never see? What battles have they fought that history forgot? What truth are they protecting by refusing to pretend? Because sometimes the most honest gesture is no gesture at all, and sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who held the line when it mattered most. Remember that honor isn't always loud, Raven 12, and keep that in mind. If you were moved by this story, please leave a comment saying, "I see you." For everyone who serves in silence.